few weeks ago I had a bad outlet in my workshop that was causing my power bar to go off and all, and it was a bad receptacle, bad plug outlet. And my washing machine has been doing the same thing. It just shuts down at random. So I figured, okay, I got two bad outlets. Let's change this one, which I did. Everything's fine. Today we're going to do a little investigation to see what went wrong and why this thing failed. I have a mountain of work, and today, this video at least, first of many I'm sure, I'm going to look at this outlet that failed. This is not the one that failed in the shop. This was one that was installed at the same time when the house was built. This is the one that was in my laundry room and had my washing machine plugged into it. It's not a washer that draws a lot of current. It's a modern washer, and it only draws 6 amps. It's one of these high efficiency units that uses an inverter to power a direct drive motor. So it's not like this thing has had a lot of abuse, and it has not had a lot of things plugged in and unplugged. But one thing plugged into it for the last several years. Obviously this is not a used outlet. There's nothing that was been plugged in the back here. The wires were attached with the screws, and as I say, this one here, the washer just shut off. So we moved it from one to the other, and it worked. You can tell it was plugged into the bottom one because you can see the discoloration just from UV light over the years. This one had the plug in it, and when it shut down, it was moved to this one. It only worked for a little while, and then the thing started shutting down again about the same time as the one in my shop started acting up. So let's just dissect this plug and see why these things are so bad, because this is 2 of them from the same batch. So let's first take a look at the construction of this thing. This one is, what brand is it? Does it say? Is it branded? It's a Leviton. So you would expect that a Leviton would be a good outlet. And I'm sure millions of people have these in their house, because there's basically, in North America anyway, there's basically 2 brands that you have. You either have a Leviton or you have a Lutron. When I turn this over again, take a look at the screw terminal on the bottom right. So we look at the back side of this one. This is for the, I guess the date coding's probably in here somewhere. But there's the barcode for the batch that this thing was out of. And you can see this one's riveted together, so there's no putting this back together once it comes apart. But we need to see why this thing failed. So let's take it apart. I'm just going to use my trusty side cutters if I can remember where I put them. Oh, there's some pliers there. That's not going to help me. There's the side cutters. Let's just try cutting off this rivet if I can. And we'll take a look and see what the heck went wrong with this thing. Here's the other rivet out. So these are basically, they're riveted together. And here is the interior. As you can see, the contacts here obviously the springs have let go. And, you know, the contacts aren't that loose, but they certainly were not making a good connection when this thing was in the wall, because it was shutting down. Same with this one. I'll just open up the screws here and see if there's any sign of any pitting along the screws here where the wire was attached. Unless unless the wire wasn't crimped and tight, but the wire was wrapped around the screws, and the screws were tight. Let's take a look at those screws. I guess, yeah, look, that's where the problem was, right there. Take a look at the edge of the screw here. That may have been where the connection problem was, right there. Although the wires, when they took them off, they weren't blackened or burned or anything. But looking at the screw here, it looks like maybe the wire where it's bit down on there's an edge on this, is a little bit of a bevel you can see on the edge of the screw here. So the conductor is going to be gripped along the edge of the screw here, and maybe that's where it failed in the case of this particular one. You can see here looks like a little bit of arcing. So I think that's probably where the fault was on this particular one, and not so much the contacts, because I say the contacts were tight. But the washing machine that was plugged in would just shut off. Like it was shut off mid-cycle, and being one of these new machines, there was no power, and I'd walk up to the plug and I'd unplug it and plug it back in, and maybe that was just enough. Oh yes, look at this. Here's some evidence. There's exactly what happened. You can see it right here. That screw got hot, and this was probably the one that was. Let's see, that would have gone in like that. Yeah, see, there's where the problem was, right there. There's where the problem was. We just solved this problem. It was on the hot wire. This is the screw that was screwed into here. On the hot side, because it's the small blade. This is the neutral side over here. The hot side, where that wire was wrapped around and screwed down, you can see some arcing right along the edge of that screw, and you can see it right there. There's where the fault was. I guess I should have looked at this part closer too when I was taking it apart. Another look at the other side of this, and you can see that it's all melted here as well. So there's the mystery on this one. It wasn't so much the plug itself failed, it was the connection done by my incompetent electrician that wired my house. I guess I should probably start checking everything, because this is two of them. Although the one in my garage, the actual plug itself failed. It wasn't the actual installation. It was the plug itself went bad, because it was noticeably loose. But this one here wasn't. But anyway, there you go. So check your electrical plugs. If you have weird things happening, like things shutting down or lights flickering and stuff, check them to make sure they're tight, because this one here, when I took it off, it didn't look to be bad, but obviously it wasn't making a good connection on this screw, and eventually over time it just started to heat up. And once it heated up, then things started to happen. And bad things can happen if they get too hot, because you can end up with a fire. Anyway, thanks for watching.